Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to our session. It's called Do You See What I See? Cultivating a Culture of Transparency in Our Profession. I'm Ashley Armato. I'm a college counselor at Trinity School in Miami, Florida.
All right, and I'm Federico Glitman. I'm one of the counselors here at Lynn University. We're pretty pumped to do this presentation today because one of the things that we're really trying to focus on is really eliminating those admission barriers and better understanding how both sides of the desk are really here to help advocate for our students. So I hope by the end of today's presentation, you'll get tips, tricks, but at the end of the day, it's just gonna be a great time with us asking questions.
Awesome. So College Kickstart and SCOIR are two platforms that we use on the high school side, and Slate is something that we do have access to as high school counselors, but it's something that I know a lot of colleges are using more and more on the post-secondary side. And we just want to talk a little bit about how we use them at our institutions, why we use them, and we think it's really important just to show one another what's being used and the tools that we use with our students and with our staffs, just to make this whole process work. It's kind of the behind the scenes part of it. So like I said, on the high school side, we use SCOIR. We're a Naviance school. This is not an ad for any of these things in particular. These are programs that we're of course happy with because we are using them and continue to use them. And there are other ones out there. But just for the purposes of this presentation, we're talking about what we use at our institutions. SCOIR is a great college search engine. It really is an awesome hub for students to use to start to learn more about schools, the way that they've linked videos, which we'll show in a little bit, statistics, just the way that they can start to enter that search process and really do that kind of research. It's great for that. List building, it's interactive between counselor, parent, and student as well. So it kind of lets us all have a role in how we're guiding the student in this process. It has our institutional data, so it's going to show students the outcomes at different schools for students from our schools, which we all know is a lot more helpful than the just the national data that are typically that's typically found on college websites that families typically have access to and ask questions about, of course. And then SCOIR is kind of how we send documents to you all as well. College Kickstart is an add-on program that we've used for the past couple of years, which really helps students organize themselves a little bit. It helps to critique their lists. Typically, it helps back up what we're saying as counselors if we're doing our jobs right, and if we have a good pulse on what's going on with admissions at different institutions, and it helps reinforce a lot of what we're saying already. And we found it pretty useful just in terms of how it packages outcome predictions. It'll tell students about the type of financial aid that's available at different schools. It'll also tell students, it'll give them suggestions in terms of how they should apply, essentially, which schools have early action, which schools have early decision, if there's any increased acceptance rates for one or the other, which is always a little bit tricky when we talk about that. But it's just another resource that we like to use for our students and our families. And the more we give them data-wise, the happier they are in terms of just understanding and having that information to kind of parse through.
Perfect. And to Ashley's point, we're not here to say, hey, you should go to SCOIR, you should go to Naviance, you should go to Maya. And for the college side, we're not saying, oh, pick Slate over the other CRMs. There's a reason that Lynn University uses Slate, and it's because it's working best for our current needs. But in general, we keep hearing this concept of what's Slate, what's the importance of it. So let's talk a little bit about it and why we selected it as well to give you a better mindset too. So on our side, it really is not Big Brother. It's new ways to predict yield, enrollment management. And one of the great things with yield, and we'll show you some data, some scattergrams, some heat maps on how colleges are reinventing the admission process. Because at the end of the day, let's be honest, right? Why do we do what we do? To identify the best fit students for our institution and to make sure that our institution is going to provide the resources for them to be successful. Now, what the definition of success is for every student, that's why we're in this profession. Everybody's different. It's not a one size fits all. Now, great things about this, it can really help eliminate admission barriers. There's something called queries in which you can actually create filters, and you can really help target, for example, 0 EFC students that are on free or reduced lunch, and really provide them with a little bit more financial literacy. Or if we notice this population has started their applications, but they haven't been able to submit it because they need a fee waiver. Let's work something internal. So it's a great way to start identifying challenges and really finding solutions for them. Now, this is one thing that I'm very proud of, is it really permits us to have incredible opportunities for support services once students enroll. So this is going to be your first insider trick of the day. This is something that we didn't want to show on the presentation, but when you're on Slate, you can actually click on a Google map and see where the student lives. Now, let's be honest, we know there's certain families that have more opportunities than others, but this is a great opportunity, and I'm going to challenge everybody on the admission side. When you're reading a student that has a free, reduced, they have various waivers, maybe a single parent home, they may be living in a public charter boarding school, which is actually here in Miami as well. What we do is, it's okay to click on the map. We know there's going to be privileges and opportunities for certain families, but for that other population, click on it. Because what we did recently is one of my students, as I clicked on it, it showed it was a parking lot. So of course we reached out to the college counselor and we told them, hey, we're concerned about this student. And we found out later on the student's homeless. So another way to help eliminate admission barriers, find support services. So that's the first insider trick, right? Like, focus on those students that maybe are zero EFC, so many waivers, and let's make sure they have a roof over their head, because there's incredible opportunities while they're in high school to make sure there's no bumps along the way. Now, all growing up, we remember Sprint. Can you hear me? Well, can you see us? So from a Slate perspective, this is the first screen that you're going to see once you log in. I'm a little bit biased because I love how it always spells my name right. There's so many times I go to events and it's always spelled wrong, but it also tells me when I access Slate and from how many devices. So I can actually do it on my laptop, on my iPad, and on my phone. So on my iPad and on my phone, there's apps which will permit me to use Slate more user-friendly. The thing I love is, as we know, we carry multiple hats in all sides of the desk. I love that it tells me who's gonna visit campus, at what time they're going to visit, from what high school, what are they interested in doing, and a little bit more insights. Now, as we're going back into hopefully the norm soon with new virtual visits, sometimes I can't remember if it's Monday, Friday, Tuesday, or Thursday. I love that it's gonna tell me which high schools I'm going to visit, at what time, how many students signed up, and the Zoom link. So it is a great reminder to me. When I first see this, it's the first thing that I'm pretty pumped about, because it'll tell me how many people will visit campus, and do I need to set time aside to make sure I can be at all my visits. So extremely user friendly compared to other CRMs, which is why we decided to go the Slate route.
Awesome. Yeah, I know during quarantine and working from home, it seems like Groundhog's Day sometimes. So it's really helpful to have that laid out for you, I'm sure. So moving back to SCOIR a little bit, we've been using SCOIR. I think this is our third graduating class, or second graduating class, third year on SCOIR, I should say. It is really great for that initial college search. It's really user friendly. And I also find that SCOIR works a lot like just platforms do, just social media, the way that our students and their generation is really consuming things. It's really user friendly for them. And I think they are using this program more than they have used others in the past, simply because of that. I think just their increased engagement is one reason alone that we are really happy with using SCOIR for the past few years. So if we're looking at it here, this is just a quick snapshot of a potential college search. You can filter with personal interests and activities. There's equestrian there, there's debate, the student is interested in engineering. You can focus from 2-year to 4-year institutions, their distance and location, number of undergrads, the type of athletics they have, just basic stuff that we all know is part of that college search. And here you can also see the student is focusing on schools in the United States, but SCOIR also does let students look at schools and filter searches in the UK, abroad, anywhere else you can think of. The student's looking at Massachusetts right now, and they're also looking at 4-year bachelor programs as well. And these are just kind of the first ones that popped up. There's a little button there that says suggest towards the right, and that's on the counselor side, so I can suggest a school to a student to look at. And then it also does a really quick breakdown, obviously, of SAT score or ACT score, acceptance rate, and the number of undergrads. All right, this is just a little like snapshot of a particular institution. So we chose Gonzaga because it was kind of one of the featured ones at some point, and it was helpful to make the video. So this is kind of the page that you'll see for every single institution. It'll have an acceptance rate, which is national, number of undergrads, tuition in state and out of state, and basically just all of this like quick information that's really helpful for students to know about diversity, geographical location, degrees. Really, it's just pulling information from websites and then putting it on here. It even tells you how close an airport is, how to get to the institution, public transportation available. Again, it's a really great snapshot of that. And then you can look at different interests that are tagged with that school. And this is right from schools' Instagram accounts. And our students are on Instagram a lot. And everything is hashtags. So they can click on something in particular that they're interested in, like hashtag rowing. And then they can actually get linked to the website at the school and also just start to see rowing at other institutions as well. So it really helps to bring all of the information to one place. I know that there's so many conversations that we have with families where we say, it depends, every school is different, so you have to go to their website. You have to see it on their website with financial aid, with scholarship opportunities, deadlines. There's no such thing as, everything's January 1st, everything's November 1st for early. We don't even have an enrollment day anymore. So things are changing. And I think it's really helpful when we can hopefully house a lot of information in one place. And then from there, of course, they're going to have to do their research at individual schools. But just to have it someplace in the beginning is a little bit less daunting and a little bit less overwhelming for a lot of families. So I know they really appreciate just that kind of central hub for everything. And just so you all see what information they're pulling from your institutions, and how it's getting there, and just to be conscientious of what's out there and how it's getting filtered in. I think it's really important for y'all to kind of get a glimpse into that.
All right, so the question that Ashley and I both had while we were creating this is, instead of what came first, the chicken or the egg, which one came first on CRMs? Was it the scattergram or was it the heat map? So hopefully you can help us find out that solution.
So this is an unnamed university. It's a real university that a lot of my students apply to. And this is essentially the scattergram that we use. SCOIR also does provide a heat map. I didn't share it, but essentially it just will divide everything into quadrants. So you can really say, the green is good, the red is not great, the yellow is somewhere in between. It's a great visual for that. But this is just, a scattergram. As you can see, it has a little legend and key. The red circles are not accepted, green circles are accepted, waitlisted, and then deferred. Sometimes we never hear back from kids if they were deferred, and then typically they're deferred and then denied. Sometimes they're deferred and waitlisted though, or given admissions. So that's why there's some of those that are deferred and we didn't know the final outcome because students didn't update it. They think that we know all of the decisions from you. If students swear that you all call us about every single decision and we know before them, but it's obviously not like that, as you can imagine, which is why, we'll get to this later, but when schools allow us to see decisions on Slate, it's so helpful. So we don't have to run around and look for these kids and ask for decisions. But ultimately, everything is housed here. It's institutional data. We have everything going back from 2014 that's shown here because, trying to keep things fairly relevant, of course. And again, it's just great for list building. It's really helpful to show families, I know that this is your top choice, but this school typically takes students who are, a 3.4, 3.5 and above, and you're at a 2.8, and it's going to be really tough. We're still going to apply, of course, but it's going to be a reach. So let's try to make sure that we have a healthy list with lots of options. And again, these visuals, the statistics, it becomes a lot more than I don't have faith in you. I don't think you can do this. It's not a personal judgment, even though this process is so personal. But again, it's just helpful as tools to help educate families and let them see how trends are changing, particularly for families who have had more than one student at our school. Let's say they had a student 5 years ago who was admissible to this school in an early action round. But now we're working with a younger sibling, and it looks like it's changed. The institution's become a lot more competitive, so it might not work out the same. So again, just these tools and having the institutional data and a way to present it is really, really useful.
And to Ashley's point, as she's talking about trends, I mean, when I first started about 10 years ago, it was so different on how to predict a student's admission status. Now, the next slide we're going to show you, I promise it's not Big Brother, but this is a great opportunity for colleges to also start seeing. So obviously I was a little bit biased. So the slide here is from one of our students who has already committed to Lynn. So as you can see, they open almost every single email that we send them. This is a great opportunity because on our side, what we notice is if students aren't opening up emails, what are other forms that we should be in communication with them? As Ashley showed in the beginning, with social media playing such a crucial role in making decisions nowadays, we have moved away from emails and going more into social media. Or if we see that there's a student that prefers to communicate with us through phone calls or even text messages, we don't send them as many emails as other students. This is one of the great things about Slate is that it really provides us that opportunity to segment how we want to market ourselves and communicate with students on this is what's going on right now at Lynn. These are some news we want to share. This is a status update on your application. So it really is those small things that make a big difference. But again, this is not Big Brother. It's not that we go in and we count every single time an email was sent, every single time an email was open. It just permits us on a visual appealing aspect to figure out what is the best way for us to continue to stay communicated with students. Especially this year, we know that students are applying to many more schools than prior due to so many schools going test optional for a year or two. So just a great way to stay in the student's mind. But even what I'm going to challenge my colleagues on this side is if you see that you're sending too many emails and they're not opening them, that's a great way to sit down with marketing and figure out, okay, what should we change for subject lines? Should we be doing emails? Should we try phone? Should we try text messages? What should we try? This is actually a great opportunity for colleges to continue to reinvent themselves and really stay prevalent in today's society.
Yeah, I would also add, I know that that being aware of these kinds of interactions and just tracking interest can seem like it is that it opposes access, right? Because students can't always visit campus. So when you're showing demonstrated interest to institutions, a lot of schools are still looking like at that. And obviously access plays a role in that. So it's really tough for students who don't have the means to attend open houses and go on campus for info sessions and for tours. Obviously that has shifted slightly with the pandemic and with COVID and having to do a lot more things online. And I would, take it a step further and challenge us all to really think about how we can continue to use those types of yield predictors and just online interactions with students as a way to show interest. I don't think everyone should be expected to go to a campus. And I know that so many of our colleagues are aware of this as well. So, how can we help our students show that they're interested in schools if they can't be at the school or they can't visit? So a way to do that is to tell kids, if you like the school, make sure you're reading their emails. Something as simple as that can show an added interest in a school. And I think when we have this kind of information on our end as secondary counselors, we can really help to advise our students to, if you love a school, show them that you love them. And this is one of the ways that you can do it. So it's super important to understand how things are working so we can kind of best help our students and help them have a leg up in this process.
Absolutely, Ashley. And just to add to your point, I think it really comes down to being intentional as well. Because on our side, we are able to track if you click on that link, how long. If you were just there for a second, that just says, hey, you're just clicking on the links to show that you're interested. However, we want to know about intentionality. So with virtual sessions, we also have a list of who signed up, who attended, who didn't appear. So if you're signing up to just say that you were there and you're at 10 sessions, but you didn't attend any of the 10, right? It's all about intentionality. It's not about, is Big Brother looking at how many emails I open, how long, what sessions I attend. Not at all. It's all about intentionality. So as long as we're intentional, everything. Now, growing up, we all remember Carmen Sandiego, but how does that translate into enrollment management?
All right, so we are back with SCOIR. And this is, again, just to show you a little bit about what we see. SCOIR works in columns, similar to social media stuff and Instagram. And again, I think this is why it's working really well with this generation right now. So the suggested column can be schools that are suggested by the counselor, by the parent. Only the student on SCOIR can choose to follow a school. So again, trying to put them in the driver's seat a little bit. They can drag a school over to following, and then everything kind of can get dragged eventually to follow the process to, following to schools that you're going to be applying to. And then eventually that last column is schools that I have applied to. So for me, that's kind of the signal that a student has actually submitted an application. And sometimes I might fib a little bit and tell them that I can't pull the school over until they do, and that I can't send their documents unless they do this. It's not true. I can send their documents and, it's fine. But sometimes I try to give them that little extra incentive to really make sure that they're paying attention to SCOIR, that they're adding schools, that they're not forgetting to tell me they applied somewhere. I, of course, encourage interactions and, conversations with students. But for those that are a little bit, less, a little bit more reluctant to remind me, or they forget, God bless them, SCOIR is a really great way just to have a pulse on what's going on in their process if they're updating it and using it. Freddie mentioned earlier that Slate has an app. SCOIR has a student app that's pretty robust and they can do a lot of stuff on this app as well. So I'll email students and ask them to update SCOIR, and I'll see that they update it almost immediately. And I know they're doing that from their phone. I know that when we as counselors, we don't really see if they're accessing it on their phone or not, but we can see when and how they're accessing it. And I think that's pretty cool too, just so we know that students are using it. We can see the last time that they've logged in as well. So, if it's been a couple months, I know that these aren't, these aren't updated decisions or anything like that as well. So again, just a really, quick snapshot into kind of what they see and what we see on our side in terms of just how they help students work through that process really visually, and how we can kind of have a sense and keep track of what's going on with the student, and where we've kind of come from and where we're ending up at the end of the process.
Perfect. So as crazy as it sounds, this was for us such a key factor when we decided to go into Slate, because it's so visually appealing. So we're going to talk a little more about that taboo of when I send documents, how quickly do schools receive it, those aspects. But on our side, at various CRMs, in order for you to see the status of any student's page, sometimes you have to click 3 or 4 times. On Slate, once you go into this page, immediately you know if the student just started their application, if we're waiting for documents to arrive. One of the great things is once all the documents are in, Slate has an incredible tool that within 30 minutes, all the students' materials are sent into your reader queue. So you can actually read a student's application within an hour of completion. But previously on our side, it would take about 1 or 2 days for us to be able to get all those documents, wait until the morning for it to be processed within 24 hours, and then read that file. On my side, I can actually start reading my early action students as they're completing their application, instead of having to take a whole week off and read hundreds of applications. So as you'll see, review, counter review, that means that their documents are ready for me to read. Special programs, that's typically if they're applying to one of our programs that has a separate application. So it'll tell us, hey, these are the additional documents needed. Quality check at Lynn, although we have an incredible opportunity to be flexible, we do have various individuals that read the our notes before making a final decision. So that's sent into a second and potentially even third read. And then at the end of the day, hopefully everybody comes back with great news and we'll be able to see if they've been offered admission. Now, on our side, I know the key question that we received on both sides of the desk, are my documents in? I told my counselor that we needed this. Why isn't this in? And I'm sure they also hear on the other side, we sent it a few days ago. Why doesn't it show up on your end? Now, one of the things that we tried as we were preparing for this, which is very exciting, and another reason we decided to go into the Slate realm, is if you see on March 17th, 2021, a progress report was sent. That was sent about an hour prior. So instantaneously, even though we just became a SCOIR school, prior to that, when Ashley, for example, sent documents, and this is one of her students, on October 21st, within 24 hours, we had all the documents in, and we're able to tell them, hey, this is what we have, this is what we're missing. a key thing I want everybody to know is that Slate is not from night to day. What they typically tell you is it takes 3 years for you to fully implement the whole program. So I know Ashley has some great insight about the counselor portal, college counselor portal page, but on our side, admission reps are able to upload documents. Not everything has to be uploaded through a counselor portal page. And once the documents are uploaded in 30 minutes, it's going to show as either complete, and hopefully you'll be sent to my reader queue for us to make a final decision.
Yeah, so I know you can see that that last progress report on here was sent on March 17th. That was one that we were kind of testing to see what was going to happen if we sent it and how long it would take. And it was almost 30 minutes, I think. I think by the time we finished that call, it was already uploaded. And again, we are not, I am not telling all of my students the documents are getting to schools within 30 minutes, and that's the expectation, and that's what they should be seeing. And, especially during busy times, we understand that that process is much slower typically. And I will put in a plug for SCOIR in that they will follow through like detectives to figure out where a document is. If we've sent it and if it shows a sent and processed on the SCOIR end, they know they guarantee and they know it's at a school. It just might not be in the right bin. It just might not be, they just can't find it sometimes, technology and, the God bless everyone who's in the processing part of these jobs, because it is nitty gritty and they do a great job piecing all of this together so that it can get to, the readers. And so things can kind of get uploaded and updated on their screens. And thank you to the schools that are so careful with their words. And when they send that bounce back that students need to submit documents to complete their application, that they're not saying that they don't have them. I guess educating our students on our end too is important, that you're gonna get these emails. It doesn't mean that I haven't sent it. It just means that things take a while to sync. So I do wanna be really careful in saying that none of us are expecting that things are gonna happen with a really quick turnaround. And we have to be super patient. But it's just really cool to see how quick it can work during non-busy times, and that, I press a button and then it shows up on his end, and that's the way it's supposed to work. So it's really cool to kind of see that follow through. Also, just that date changes, right? And that was a document that I had sent previously, maybe in November. I think it was before her first decision, her decision was given. Or I could have sent it maybe with the mid-year report. I can't quite remember, but it'll come up again. And I've had conversations with folks on the college side where, I'm telling them that I initially sent something in October, and then it's not really showing a sent on my end, or I'm trying to resend it to see if it'll work to get over there. And that's probably just me pressing too many buttons and being nervous for a kid who's getting a letter saying that they need a document ASAP, or they're not going to be considered for early action. They're going to be pushed to regular. And then I've had conversations with folks on the college end who are saying, well, you didn't send it in October, you sent it later. And I'm like, no. I sent it before, but I resent it, and now it's not showing the initial date. So there's confusion there too. So just a reminder for us to all have some grace with one another as we're trying to figure out and get those documents over. But it can be a complicated process. And one of the reasons that I do love Slate is that on the counselor end, when we can upload documents ourselves, let me tell you how amazing that is. I cannot preach that more. With schools that have that, enable that on Slate, it is such a godsend, because especially if these are documents that we house, that I have, on Slate, on SCOIR, and I can upload if they're teacher recommendation letters, the counselor letter, any grades. Just, notifying the student, keeping them aware and in the driver's seat in this process is so important, and 100%. But also, if you tell the student that something's missing, then they have to tell me, and then I have to find a way to get it to you all again, whether it's, calling up SCOIR and asking them to figure it out, or calling the school and asking them how I can resend something, which I'm happy to do, which is my job. But when I can just do it really seamlessly, because I'm looking at Slate and I'm checking on my students and seeing if they're good, and I see something's missing, even if I've sent it, I understand how this all works and it's not perfect. I am more than happy to just upload it and send it to you all. And that is beautiful. I would really encourage schools to think about how much quicker you would get documents if counselors could do that. I would call you less. I promise I would bother you less. it's great. Some schools will show exactly, essentially what Freddie's showing on his screen with a checklist, and we'll see what's missing. And that's, again, super helpful for us because I can just upload something real quick, and then it's there. It's there probably within the same day, honestly. It'll show as receipt. There are some schools that will allow us to upload documents, but won't let us see what's missing. So again, it's more helpful if we can actually see the checklist, but still the ability to send a document that way is super easy and super fast. And then I'll just put a plug in for decisions again. When we're able to see the decisions, I know in a world where we are trying to be really mindful of counselor calls and because of access, because not every student has a counselor who knows to call or who has the time to call, who can call. It's a lot on the college side, and I understand that. A lot of times we really just want to have a slight heads up if we can. If not, we just want to know what the decisions are because, again, we have to run after the kids, and God bless them, we love them, but they sometimes are just tough to get a hold of, especially this year during hybrid and not every kid's on campus and online learning. But ultimately, just that transparency, just the ability to kind of see on our end what transpired, what's happening. It's just so helpful for us. And I know I'm in a privileged position at an independent school to have the time to be looking each day, on Slate and whatnot. But ultimately, I think it can really increase a counselor's ability to quickly, get those documents in so you can, spit out, a decision at the end of the day. And it just, I think, facilitates the process in such an awesome way.
Absolutely. And obviously every school has different protocols and processes on how to do documents. My advice is for colleagues on my side of the desk, speak with whoever's working within the data processing team and ask them to give you permission, because you can either state that documents have been received, you can waive them, you can remove them, you can help eliminate an admission barrier with a single click. And on Slate, again, we're big fans of it. It's because within 30 minutes, whatever we click gets updated immediately for a student. So if a student's attending a school, let's say in Miami, the last 4 years, but they are originally from a different country and they're here under a visa of their parents, right? LE, it permits us to waive that TOEFL score just because they've been in the United States the last 4 years studying at an American-based school. Our previous CRMs, unfortunately, we would have to do a little bit more digging. So my challenge is speak with your data processing team, have that opportunity and that access to make those quick changes to help eliminate barriers once more.
So Science, I just wanted to put a plug again, just about the tools that are out there for schools, and this is provided through SCOIR. Essentially, students, you can set aside a day or two. Students can take, they're kind of games, puzzles, quizzes. Some of them are harder, more annoying according to the kids, and then others longer. But essentially, they're going to assess your talents, figure out what your strengths are, and then kind of tell you which strengths are best applicable to which types of careers and majors. So again, in an age where so many families think about return on investment, they think about, what is my kid going to get out of college and how can I help them, have a leg up when they get there to kind of know what they might want to start taking or careers. And they're just thoughtful. And I'll, say also, coming from South Florida with a large Latinx population, a large international population, school works very differently, or college works very differently than it does in the States. So you go to college over there for a career in mind. You're not exploring, and there's so many pros and cons to different systems. We really let students find themselves, but it can be an expensive journey. So I think some families are a little bit, they're happy when we give them tools like this that can, help them have important conversations at home about what kids might want to do and things like that. So this was just to kind of show you one of the add-ons that SCOIR provides, and something that I've heard more and more schools start to use, because a lot of families want that career advice that, not every school is doing in the same way, but this is a tool to help bridge that a little bit.
Absolutely. And to your point, Ashley, coming from Argentina, I wish I had this tool, because the truth of the matter is, and the uncomfortable truth is, liberal arts really isn't celebrated that much in other countries. When I graduated from Argentina, first thing you had to do was take your entrance exam. You wouldn't have those 2 years to gain that English, math, science, those liberal arts, humanities, philosophy. So this is just a great opportunity. And my advice is for my colleagues on this side, create an account as well. and get to know a little bit more about what our students are going through to better understand their mindset as they apply to your colleges and for particular majors too.
All right, and then again, another program we started using College Kickstart maybe 2 or 3 years ago. It's tough. The pandemic year has really just helped everything blend together, so I can't really tell how many years anymore. But this is a really quick way for students for us to help students list build essentially. It also has really great planning tools, but essentially you need to run it using 6 schools. You can kind of heart or favorite your top 2. And it might suggest that you use early decision for those schools. Again, I understand that admissions rates and early decision are much more complicated than sometimes we tend to talk about them. But the kids see the results in terms of letting a school know that you love them and that you want them. I think has proven to be helpful in the process at certain schools when students are of a certain caliber already. And we try really hard to explain that in a way that doesn't dilute the process of early decision at all. But it's something that we're aware of that is a real helpful strategy for some schools and for some students again. So it's really about matching the 2 together. So if you go to the next slide, Freddie. So this is basically grading their list. Now, the C+ is a tough blow for some kids, but it's a necessary blow, and it's a necessary blow earlier in the process. So this is a great, September at the latest. It's great if kids, have their list set in May before they leave for the summer, and we can kind of give this to them and be like, hey, so let's work on this over the summer. Let's look for some more schools. But if this is what my wonderful boss, Danny Reynolds, likes to call the come to Jesus moment, where this is September and you're like, listen, we're going to need to fix this list a little bit. So this is saying that this is a C+. We want it to be an A or a B. They're telling you, listen, you need to add another target. We think that it'll help your list be a little bit more balanced, and that's really the goal. And then if we go to the next slide, it's going to give some more suggestions and a little bit more information about, you have an aggressive list. So we're going to have to kind of, fix that because you've got reaches and targets. And, College Kickstart, depending on the tiers that you're using, they're going to use local data. They're going to use national data. As counselors, we can actually go in and tweak it. So if we know that students with a certain profile are typically accepted to a certain school, we can go in and tweak that a little bit so it better reflects the results that we see at our school. As an independent school versus public school students in Florida, that's always going to be different. So your local context won't always match necessarily what happens at your school. So we can go in and tweak, and the students don't really see that we do that either. So we can kind of help this mirror. I'll always run this by myself first before I do it with a student, just to make sure that it matches up with the advice that I'm telling them. And if it doesn't, it helps me kind of recenter a little bit and ask myself, is it an aggressive list? Is it not an aggressive list? So it helps me kind of check myself before I meet with the student, and also helps the student kind of check themselves at the same time. So it's super useful in that way. And then again, because the student hearted those 2 schools, they're telling the student, there's a good chance in the early decision rounds. And again, I don't want to say that we don't use context and really have really important conversations when we talk about early decision. I don't want to seem ignorant in that way. And I don't want my college colleagues to think that we're just telling every kid to apply ED to every school. But it is the right decision for certain students who have identified that they have a strong preference to going to certain institutions again. So it'll tell you, hey, this might be the best way to play this. And strategy is important in this. We want students to find the right institutions, and we want to figure out how we can help them get to those places.
All right, perfect. Now, going back to Slate, one of the things that we really love is that this really gives us a great opportunity to figure out which students may be more interested at certain institutions compared to others. Again, this is not going to be Big Brother, but this is, I love what Ashley just said, we're going to pull a Danny Reynolds coming to Jesus moment. When you have maybe your favorite student that they're not opening up the emails, and then you have those students that may not be responding to your communication, and then you see this show up. You see that in total, they opened up an email 184 times. That's incredible. That could be students that maybe you're saying, okay, the student's opening up the emails, but they're not responding to my text messages or my phone calls. Easy adaptation, right? Instead of trying that, just respond through email. But again, this also tells us on our side, from the admission side, what are students more interested in looking at? What are the virtual sessions that they're more likely to open and actually attend? Because one of the difficult things about our profession, right, is we're sometimes too passionate to catch 22, that we think this idea is going to work. It has to work. I know it's going to work. And then it doesn't work. And you're like, let me go back into the data and see what happens. So we notice, at least on our side at Lynn, that instead of saying application status update, if it says congratulations, Ashley's going to open it up more than just saying status update. So small changes we've been able to make on our side to really show dividends as we're trying to build our class and really focus on enrollment management. Now, the thing where I really want to challenge everybody, right, it's our support services. Slate is a great tool, but at the end of the day, we have to remember, we're not here to recruit students, we're here to recruit graduates. So a few things that Slate provides for you after the first year or two, and again, right, Slate is a 3-year minimum project. The first one is it does permit you to send text messages to students. However, as we know, there's other third-party vendors. Figure out if it works best for you. Some institutions do use the text message. And the great thing about it is if you use it through Slate, it gets uploaded immediately. You can track their responses. You can continue communication without even being on a phone. It's incredible nowadays. Financial aid packages. So, my apologies. With financial aid packages, this is something that we're very passionate about because, again, right, we want to recruit graduates, not just students. So our challenge is, after student enrolls, remember the process isn't done, right? So on October 1st, when the FAFSA or the CSS profile open up, reach out to your students that were 0 EFCs or Pell Grants and have a session with them about financial literacy as well, and tell them, hey, even though you're a student at this school just for a few weeks, the FAFSA will reopen. Let's maximize that financial aid package. Because although Ashley and I are both in the state of Florida, that doesn't mean that every student from Florida is going to receive all the funds they should if they would have applied on October compared to, let's say, March. A key thing, right? March 1st, a lot of grants are waitlisted for these students. So this is just another great way to support the students that are currently at your institution by saying, hey, I see that you're a Pell or 0 FC. Let's definitely submit that FAFSA or CSS between October 1st and December 1st to really focus on the long-term goals. Now, under application details, we're going to have a few options here. The first one is, and this is something that I love as I'm trying to connect with my students and hear their story and really sense what their vision is going to be at Lynn, is I just have to make one click and I'll be able to see what I reviewed on their notes. Instead of in previous systems, I had to open up 2 databases, 4 clicks. Basically, within 5 minutes, I would finally be able to see what I needed, which wasn't being effective or efficient. But now with Slate, with one quick detail click, you're able to get all that information. Now with housing circumstances, to me, this is important, right? Because this is a great way for you to track how many beds are we gonna have on campus. Yes, we know there's some schools that are reviewing 120, 130,000 applications, 120 or 130,000 applications, my apologies, this year. But here's the thing, the number of beds doesn't change. If they only had 2,000 beds last year, this year they're not going to say, oh, we only have 1,500 beds or 1,000 beds. It's always going to be around the same amount for the incoming class. This is a great opportunity for you to work with your families and figuring out, hey, are they in that mile radius where they can commute? Now, with military DACA and asylee, again, this is where I challenge our families. Like, if you're a part of the military, you can qualify for the Yellow Ribbon program. That is a great query for you to set up to reach out to all your military families if your school is a Yellow Ribbon school, which means that covers 100% of tuition and fees. But with DACA and asylee students, that's where you can really target those students with a different messaging and talk about financial literacy, talking about support services once they're on campus. Because as crazy as it sounds, a lot of individuals may not know what office hours are. They may not know that when you look at your schedules, Tuesdays and Thursdays may say T for Tuesdays, but R for Thursdays. So it's those small things that are going to make a big difference. And last but not least, it's that verification process. We know that it's a little bit unfair and that about 30% of families get selected for financial aid verification. This is a great way for you to start working with them because sometimes that verification can take 6 to 8 weeks for the financial aid to be confirmed. And as our families are making decision right for May 1st, you don't want them to wait until June or July or even August for you to predict yield. But we know that we're roughly at that 45-minute range. This is just a small sample of larger conversations that Ashley and I have always had, and we continue to recommend that everybody have these difficult conversations to continue to find those right answers for the right challenges.
Yes, awesome. Thank you so much, Freddie, for doing this presentation with me. Again, we are not, overly endorsing anything in particular, but these are things that are working for us. And I think it's really great to know a little bit more about what's going on your side. It's been a long time since I was working in college admissions as an admissions counselor. So all of these updates, when I did it, we were still reading papers. So it's been a while. There's been a lot of increases and updates and different challenges too. So I think it's important for us to all know what we see on the other side and how we can work together, and we're partners in this process. And I know a lot of people like to say it's not one side of the desk or the other, it's a table, it's a round table, there are a lot of people at it. So the more we bring people in and the more transparency we have, I think the better we can serve our students, which is kind of why we're all doing this, I think, at the end of the day.
Absolutely. And being a SACAC organization, this is where we really want to set up a challenge for everybody. If you're a college, bring in college counselors from private schools, independent schools, CBOs, public school counselors, and show them what you're looking at and show them how you're working with enrollment management. Because it could be that small thing that makes a big difference for that one student that they wouldn't have been made aware of. But really, on behalf of Ashley and myself, thank you so much for joining us. Again, continue in communication. Let's work together and let's continue to figure out how we can eliminate barriers and just find more support services for our students.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone. I hope you're enjoying the conference.